I'm going to jump in and play the rest of this weekly Rapid Arena. Haven't played a lot of chess over the holidays. We're going to go ahead and join now. And e4, playing against Fast Novaste. We're going to just play knight f3, keep it simple to start. Play a Scotch, challenge the center right away. I do not have my mouse, so I'm on the laptop, so I'm not going to be quite as fast. So I'm kind of glad to see that this is the Rapid Arena, since I was thinking about playing some Blitz, but this is probably a little bit better. Alright, so when they challenge with bishop c5, you just go ahead and take the knight. They can play queen f6, threatening checkmate here if they wish. And you can play your queen to guard f2 if you'd like, but I like the queen f3 lines straight away. And usually they take with one of the pawns, because putting the queen and king on the same diagonal can be a bit risky. So now if they play e or d6 here, they lose their queen. And they fell for it. So if they play queen f6, they still should take with one of their pawns to avoid this trap here. So at least we got to demonstrate that. Nice 8-move win. I've gotten to do that a few times over the board, actually. So even in slow games, I've gotten a couple wins in the first 10 moves with that exact tactic. Now, if black plays correctly, they get equality, but white has a playable position. And I was actually taught that line, or shown the line, by a master who said that in slow chess he's actually beaten another master with that first 10 moves. So people just forget about the danger of putting their queen and king on the same diagonal, especially in the opening. Alright, we're going to play d5. I'm going to go for a solid setup. And I like to play e6 straight away. And now, since they played their bishop out early, we're going to play a pretty early c5. c6 is also possible, but against the London system, there's no reason to be quite as slow about it. You can challenge the center right away, especially because they aren't playing for c4. And we get our knights on these two squares here, where they aren't attacking. Our knight isn't guarding our knight, which means that our knights are a little more active. So when your knight is guarding your knight, it's a little more solid. But in a position like this, we can just go straight for the activity. Where do we want our bishop? Do we want our bishop on d6? Do we want to trade off? Do we want to exchange first? Let's exchange once. And then maybe put our bishop on d6. And now if we trade the dark squared bishops, their move h3 is a little bit wasted, since the bishop never had to come back to h2. So if we take on c4 here, we give them an isolated pawn. But at the same time, they're going to be able to take on c4 with their knight if they so choose and hit our queen with tempo. So I'm thinking maybe we should just castle here. If they take on d5, we're just going to retake with our knight. Yeah, let's just get our king safe. Alright, now c5 is not a great move here because d4 is already a weakness. And so it's the right moment I can play e5 and undermine this position. In fact, I can go queen f4 here right away and threaten to take that d pawn. The only way to really chase the queen around is to play g3, which weakens their king side a bit. So I think I like my position quite a bit here. I need to figure out how to develop this bishop. Alright, well, we're going to go ahead and take that pawn. There's no reason not to here. And now you can see the c5 pawn is also going to be a weakness. And our d pawn is passed. So we need to find time to play bishop d7 and bring our rook to the c file and our other rook to the d file. So now we've established that our rooks belong on the d and c file, behind our passed pawn and in front of their most advanced pawn, their weak pawn. Now we're up a pawn here, so we do want to exchange pieces. So I think I'm going to just go ahead and take their bishop. Or do I want to take their knights? No, let's just get rid of that bishop and finish my own development. So he's playing even faster than I am, and I was thinking that I'm playing a little faster than I need to. Alright, I'm going to play the move a6, I think, with the threat of playing bishop b5. Just see how they respond to that. They can't put their knight on d4 because my queen's attacking it. So my queen is relatively stable on f4. They can hit with g3, but I just back my queen up and hit the pawn. I'm thinking a6 and then put my bishop on b5 if I can, but also c6 is a strong square. I might even have some kind of kingside attack coming. I also like a6 because I plan on moving my rook off of the a file, so that just makes the a pawn feel a little less weak. I'm not too worried about the b6 square being a little weaker. There's not really any way for white to take advantage of that. Alright, and they went ahead and gave me the square I wanted. So we'll hit that queen, knight c4, just loses a piece. In fact, I can just take the knight and have the same tactic, and they resign. So 2 quick games so far, 2 quick wins. Just some opening mistakes from my opponents. And we're up to 436th place, more than 1,100 players, so this is quite a large arena. I didn't realize the weekly rapid ones were so large. So it's usually 4 hours long. We're only playing the last 2 hours of it, and here we go. Carlos 7321. We're going to play another e4 game. Knight f3. Let's just see if we get another scotch. Maybe every game is white. Our opponents will fall for that same trap. So here, bishop c5 would be the move we most expect. Knight g7. That doesn't look right. So one of black's main ideas playing against the Scotch is that they're going to get activity on the dark squares. They're going to get a slight lead in development. Their bishop's going to come out to c5. They're going to play against f2. And that play is going to be compensation for often doubled c-pawns. And so to play the knight in front of the bishop and the queen here feels very good for my position. So I think bishop c4 is probably in order. Also looking at playing bishop g5 right away to pin that knight. That also feels good. Yeah, let's pin the knight. f6, of course, is greatly weakening here, so I don't expect him to play that. But even if he does, okay, even if he does, our position should be quite good. Bishop e3 is a move that's pretty common just to guard the knight anyway. Now I can take with the queen or the bishop. Take with the bishop. He might play his other knight to c6, but we're not really worried about that too much. And we're just going to keep our bishop. And now it's developed to c4, attack on those light squares that are so weak. And since he's played f6, he can't challenge that diagonal with bishop e6, which is a common way to challenge the c4 bishop. So he has to find a way to get his king safe here. So the knight comes up to e5. We're just going to back our bishop up. Queen e7. So I wonder if he's going to try and go queenside or not. That would be interesting. This also allows him to play bishop e6 if he so chooses. I'm going to move my knight to c3. If they play bishop e6, I'm going to play my knight into d5. Yep, knight d5, hit the queen, and keep my bishop for a while longer. All right, and he just took. Do we take with the pawn, or do we take with the bishop? If we take with the bishop, he gets the tempo of c6. If we take with the pawn, I have to be a little careful about the e file. But I think if I take with my pawn, my next move is going to be a castle anyway. So this pawn on d5 is going to really put a stranglehold on his position. He does give me that pawn, but he can play b6 and trap the bishop. So I'm going to castle first before I decide what to do. Now, in a lot of cases, I can just give up the bishop for all those pawns and be fine. So now I need to find a way to get my queen over there. Queen d4 looks strong. And then try and work in on the light squares, push the c pawn or the a pawn, and try and open up black's king. You can see that black's pieces, other than the knight, are many moves away from getting developed. Yeah, let's just push the a pawn, since there's so many weaknesses on the queen side, and the king side is all blocked up, and he just resigns. Not down any material, but positionally lost. Okay, 3 wins. We're on a roll right now, up to 271st place. So we're probably going to get some people that play a lot more games than us at this point. All right, now, Remisterio, 2100. We're going to go ahead and play a Sicilian defense. And we're going to play an e6. Last stream we played some dragons, but we're going to go with the e6 Sicilian today. And he is playing fast. I'm going to play a6. And queen c7, I'm going to look to play along the dark squares. Our king is very safe in the center with this structure, so it's not as important for us to get castled early in the game. So let's see how he wants to deal with this. So I really like the e6 Sicilian as black because oftentimes white is less prepared against it. And this is a relatively common response by white when they don't know the main lines. And it basically gives black equality, but eliminates a lot of black's play. So knight f6 is pretty normal. We'll see if we can develop this knight up to c6. Figure out where we want this bishop on e6 or d6 or c5. Any of those are good. And then we're going to look to play b5 and bishop b7. So it's very clear where our pieces want to be. So let's start with b5 so that our bishop can get out. And with the queen on c7, it stops a lot of e5 ideas. White a lot of times is going to be playing for f4, but they've got to commit their light square bishop so they can castle first. So there they've got their light square bishop developed, which means that they are ready to castle. And I should expect f4 to show up in the next few moves. So I can play bishop b7. I can play knight c6. I can play bishop e7 here and get ready to castle myself. Let's just finish our development with b7 so that that bishop doesn't get trapped behind our pawns. He's castled, and we are going to go ahead and play knight c6. And if he plays f4, I can respond with d6. I can also respond with e5. It looks a little weird because my king hasn't castled yet. If he does castle, he's still likely to go kingside. But while white has his pieces developed, he doesn't have a clear plan of attack. So my king is still okay for the moment. I'm likely to bring my rook to the c file again. Queen e2. Queen e2 looks a little strange. Something like f4 and then bring the queen to f3 is more common. But I'm sure this is fine. This might also support an e5 push from white at some point. I can play bishop d6, but I don't think I get much after f4. So I think just bishop e7, finish my development, and let's see where white decides to commit their forces. f4 is still the move that I'm expecting. There's not really a good way for black to stop it. I'm probably going to reply to it with e5. So something like f4, e5, with tempo here on knight. So now he's moved his knight back, which is played sometimes. More common is if white doesn't want their knight on d4, is for white to simply exchange the knight off, because the knight on c6 can become quite an asset if it gets stable on the e5 square. So now I've got a lot of choices. I'm looking at knight e5, just pushing my pawn up to e5. So we've got knight e5, pawn e5 is a choice, d6 is a choice, rook c8 should be considered, and castling kingside. All those are reasonable moves in this position. When white has all their pieces developed but they're on the same rank, it usually means that black has achieved much, because if they're all in the same rank, they are not working together towards any kind of common target. So I don't think I want to play my knight to e5, because then f4 comes with tempo and I can't reply with e5. I don't want to play my rook to c8 yet, because I think I need to deal with what's going on in the center. castling is possible, but again, there's going to be something happening in the center. I want to make sure I'm completely prepared for that, which makes me think that either d6 or e5 should be my move. Pushing e5 gives up control of both f5 and d5, so I want to worry a little bit about that. So d6 looks a little better in that regard. If I was already castled, I'd be considering d5. d5 is often a move that black's trying to get in, but I don't think I should play it here with the queen already lined up with my king. So I think e6 is going to be my move, also helping to control the c5 square, where this knight could be jumping to at some point. And black has reached a very reasonable, solid position. Nothing really wrong with white's position either. And there's f4 that we expected. So we're going to follow it up with e5 as we said. And I've had this type of position from the white side a few times also. And I usually follow it up by pushing f5, but he's not going to do that. Interesting. So he's going to just jump into d5. So I'm going to take that knight. And he's on my knight. I can jump in on his queen. Can also jump out here and look to get the c4. That looks pretty good too. Think knight a5 with the idea of trying to jump into c4 later. He's trying to weaken the e5 pawn so that when he takes on e5, I can't take back with the knight. But I think that should be okay for me. We'll find out. We might be about to be taught a lesson. So I'm expecting him to take on e5 and we'll take back. And then I've got to start thinking about castling. I'm not sure if this position is exactly what black wants, since the e5 square is going to be, or e5 pawn is going to be a little bit weak. I'm not really worried about his d pawn too much coming down the board. My white square bishop is going to be pretty strong, which is nice. But maybe I waited too long to castle. My king might get stuck now. And the board is pretty open. We each have the bishop pair, but whoever's king is in more danger is going to have more trouble. And unless I can open up this dark square diagonal more, I'm not sure he's going to be in trouble. Wow. Rook takes f7. I cannot say that I expected that move. So the real question is, am I getting checkmated if I take it? I don't see a mate, so I feel like I should just take it. If I don't take it, if I just leave the rook there, I have to be losing. Because he's going to get just as much of an attack. And he's going to have that rook. So let's see. Let's see it. Is he going queen h5 now? Uh-huh. All right. We're going to have to give up this pawn. My queen's getting a little far from the action. She needs to get back into this. rook check. If I play bishop f6, he can take on e5. So let's run to the center. He's on this rook here. So let's offer a rook trade. It's the only open file, and I've got the extra rook. Wouldn't be surprised to see his bishop attack. All right. So now he doesn't have a rook. Still not seeing the checkmate. He's got some checks for sure, but I'm not seeing the checkmate. Got 2 minutes left. Almost 3 minutes. So let's keep on running here. He can take here with check. Alright, he's gotten a lot of pawns for his rook. That's for sure. My king is still wide open. So I need a move without check to get the rest of my pieces into the game. Let's run back here. He has this check, and then I run up here. I'm actually threatening checkmate on the back rank myself right now. So every move needs to be check. Oh, that just wins the queen. Was there no way for me to get out of that? I didn't like moving here because this check, but maybe that's fine for me. Yeah, maybe I did run to the wrong square there. Yep, and that's going to be it. All right, so I don't know if the attack was objectively good at the beginning, but it did work out for him. Probably good, pretty good idea for blitz if you can get at least 4 pawns for the rook. All right, so we took a loss there after 3 wins, so 3-1, but he was 300 points higher, so we can't be too upset with that. That's a game that I should look at later. See if that attack was really sound and see if there was a better way for me to defend. I'm not sure it mattered where I went in the end, what square I put my king on, but maybe I could still survive. An hour and a half left. See if it's going to pair us here. There we go. Against Yacht King. Okay, so we played a Sicilian last time. Let's play a French this time. D5. Oh, an exchange French. Okay. So the exchange French is not really that boring. I've found in my, especially my over-the-board games, that I've had a lot of exciting games with the French. Even the exchange French. Where do I want to put my pieces here? Alright, I'm going to play c6 because I don't want to commit my knight to one of these squares yet, because I want to put my knight on whatever square that he does not. So he put his knight on f3, which means that I want to put my knight on e7. That creates the most dynamic chances. And this is a pretty standard setup for both sides. I'm going to castle, put a rook on the e file, put my bishop on g4, and I think black's position's perfectly fine here. Let's just pin that knight, see if he castles here. And go from there. Hey, Jeremy. Hopefully your holidays were good, Jeremy. I wasn't in Pittsburgh very long, just for a few days, so I didn't have time to go up and meet up with anyone. I actually left the day after Christmas to get back for the New Orleans Open. Alright, so I want to put a rook on the e file. I need to get my other knight developed. I'm looking to get my knight to f5 in some cases. Just back our bishop up. Since we played f6, our bishop can always hide on f7 and then come back later in the game. Yep, we're going to come back all the way to f7. Not really worried about getting checkmated on h7. White's queen can't really get over there. White's king is still in the center. So it looks like White's plan is to go kingside. But having played a3, I should be able to get a lot of play. Okay, well my rook belongs on the e file anyway, so let's start with that. I'm expecting him to kingside castle. Now we're going to develop our knight and look to play c5 most likely. Gotta watch b5 a little bit. Maybe a6 first. a6 followed by c5. And I think that my attack should be faster than his. If he plays the move g5, I'm probably just going to play the move f5 and lock things up. Now I can take on e7 and sacrifice, but I don't think there should be anything really to that sacrifice. If I can, as long as I can keep the g file closed, my king should be pretty safe. Maybe I even consider playing g6 to stabilize the f5 pawn. Well, first, we'll see if he's going to sacrifice on e7. That'd definitely be a move I'd be considering. Okay, he didn't. And since he didn't, I should take advantage of this time to break open the queen side. See if I can get the initiative. Not sure where this knight is going. I guess he's trying to get back to g4 at some point once my pawn's on an f5, but that seems too slow. I should be able to attack on the queen side faster than that. Alright, and we want to take with our knight. Want to throw something at this bishop. I'm also eyeing up just placing my knight on the e4 square, really blocking out White's attack. Launching the b pawn. The c file is now open. My d pawn is isolated, but in a position like this where both sides are attacking, the isolated pawn is not very important. So as you can see, this game is reasonably exciting, and it's coming from an exchange French, so not nearly as drawish as people would think. That being said, in the final round of the New Orleans Open last week, I was playing the white side in exchange French, and it was looking drawish until I made a mistake. And I had to defend an opposite-colored bishop endgame against a master for 60 moves. He said I did have a draw at some point, but I couldn't quite hold it. Okay, so now I've got some choices. I can throw my knight into e4. I can push the b pawn. I can bring my rook to the c file. I can play g6 to try and keep that position closed. I can consider playing the move d4 at some point. But I think I think knight e4 looks nice to me. I've also got the move bishop e5 hitting that knight. That also looks good. Maybe that's even better. Bishop e5, then I've got the threat of pushing d4. If I play knight e4 right now, he can take the knight. And if I take back with the d pawn, he can exchange queens. I'm not sure that's the best. So I think I'm going to go with e5. And then look to play d4. If he plays the knight back to f3, I'm just going to take the knight that's on c3 here. And then I'm going to play rook c8. Play down the c file, push the d pawn. Some kind of setup where the rook's on c8, I've pushed d4, and then I've got the idea of playing knight up to d5. So he pushed us to f4, which does not scare me because it's just locking up the king side. And his play's on the king side, mine is on the queen side. So I'm going to go ahead and take that knight. Now we're going to put our rook on the c file. Once we push d4, it'll also open up this light square bishop that's been sitting on f7. I actually have a lot of nice wins in the exchange French, believe it or not, Jeremy. A lot of exciting wins with sacrifices. Some of my most exciting games have been the exchange French. And as black, I actually enjoy playing the exchange French also. Okay, so he's just getting his king off of the c file. So now the move knight e4 comes with a lot more power because it's hitting the queen and the knight can't take since the knight is off the board. Still like the move d4. I can play d4 and then move the knight also. Although, where's the queen go if I play the knight now? The queen doesn't have a lot of squares, actually. Alright, let's see where the queen decides to go first. If the queen tries to inch its way into d4, I can bring my other knight over to c6. Yeah, some of the lines are extremely boring. That is true. Some of the lines are really dry. But especially if black doesn't agree to play a boring game, I think the exchange French gets boring when both sides kind of decide, okay, let's play a boring game. But that can be said for a lot of openings. Alright, so I'm going to push d4 now. Now I've got both of these squares open for my knight and the diagonal open for my bishop. So now he's looking to exchange some pieces. Feels like we're getting close to something over here on the queen side. I'm looking at queen d5. If he takes, I can play this check, king over, check. King doesn't get checkmated yet, but we're getting close. Definitely getting close. I can also play bishop g6. I don't think I like that as much. I want to keep some pressure on this diagonal. So queen d5, bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, queen check. I've also got knight c6 here. And then my rook helps guard this knight. But he's going to be able to take that knight if he wants. There's not a lot I can do about that since there are 3 attackers and only 1 defender. I cannot save that guy without moving him, but I think I like him right there. The other move I'm looking at is playing knight c3, check. Pawn takes, queen b6 check, king over to c8, and then pawn recaptures. And, oh, that looks so tempting. That looks so tempting. Okay, so let's think about this. Knight check, takes, queen b6 check, king over, pawn takes. And that's got to be good for me. Knight check, pawn takes, queen check, king h1 to try and get a rook to the b file. Then I have the move king h1. Then I have the move rook takes instead of pawn, hitting the queen and attacking a3. Yeah. All right, we're going for it. We are going for it. Knight check. We calculated a few lines. They all look promising. We've only got a minute 30 left, so it's not the same as a slow game. Got to work on some instinct here. Not sure what I'd do if he just moves his king back. Well, if he moves his king back, I probably just move my knight back. And then my position should be fine still. With pressure down the c file, I don't care about these queenside pawns. If the bishop takes those, it just opens more lines for my rooks. Yeah, I never played the Caro-Kann too much. I played against it a lot. But it seems like white has even more options to make the game exciting against the Caro-Kann than they do the French. Yeah, he just moves his king. Ooh, I've also got bishop here first, hitting the queen again. That queen's getting close to trapped. All right, let's hit the queen. Bring all our pieces to the party. Now we just have to find a way to bring our queen in. Okay, now his back rank is a little weak. But we only got a minute left, so we got to move a little faster. Let's go with queen a5. I don't really care if he takes this knight. I just don't think that can be good for him. But we'll find out. If he takes the knight, a3 drops with check. A rook will come to the d file. Okay, so he took that pawn. Didn't think he could do that either, but all right, we're gonna go check. And we're gonna attack the queen. Okay, he's hitting my queen, but it looks like I'm gonna have to trade queens here. Yeah, looks like I'm gonna have to trade queens. Maybe there's a way out of it, but now I've got less than 30 seconds, so. Oh, okay, he just takes that. Well, I don't think that's quite as scary. I was more worried about what he did if he traded queens. Now I can go back to trying to attack. 17 seconds left, but time is the real issue. Not enough time to figure out all this. The position had to be good, but I either committed too much to the queen side or I didn't commit enough. You know, maybe there was a place I could have sacrificed faster. Okay. Can't move fast on this laptop. Oh, it's 10-0. I thought there was an increment too. So I'm really in trouble then. 4 seconds left. We don't need that guy. So we'll just pre-move and see if they run out of time. Ah, couldn't move fast enough. All right, that was a really interesting game too. So that's 2 games in a row that I'll have to take a look at later. So the first one he attacked and it worked. The second one I attacked and it didn't work. About an hour left. So probably 4 more games, I would guess. Playing Trebek, 2200. All right, knight f3. I'm going to play another Scotch. That's the theme of the day. The first 2 opponents did not play it correctly, so we'll see if he does. Yep, he plays bishop c5. See if he plays the same queen f6 line. Yep, I'm going to play queen f3, and he is probably going to take, as you see with the pawn, rather than the queen. And this is just a very standard position where white has a very slight advantage if it trades straight into an endgame. but black that has no big weaknesses. So what white has in this kind of position is the fact that black does not have a real majority on the queen side, and white does have a 4 and 3 majority on the king side. We don't really mind getting doubled f-pawns because it's going to allow our rook to get in the game pretty quickly. But now the position is essentially equal. So rook g1 is an idea that's coming. Probably develop our bishop out to c4 soon. Interesting. So I'm guessing he wants to reroute his bishop back to b6, but doesn't want to block the b pawn. All right, so let's just go ahead and attack that g pawn. And also stops our bishop from going to c4. Let's see if we can get our bishop to h3. If he plays the bishop back to d6, I can play f4, I think. Get pawns on f4 and e5 will negate his dark squared bishop pretty well. You see neither king's in any real danger now that the queens are off the board. It's a pretty open position, so the bishops all have something to do. The real battle might be about whose knight can get onto a better square. So now he's threatening to take my knight, and when I recapture, to take on a 2. But does his bishop get trapped there? It might not. I'm just going to go ahead and attack his bishop, force it to commit to something first. I don't really want to move my king to b1, since I moved my other rook off the back rank. Okay, now we're going to play f4 like we said. But if I gone king b1, then I've got to be a little more careful about my back rank, since I only have one rook on it. Alright, and I'm not really sure what's going on in this position. Alright. I'm okay trading rooks. I do have the passed pawn. So do I take with the rook or the pawn? I take with the rook or the pawn. Well, my rook's not doing a lot on the g file. And my pawn can't really be targeted on f2 right now. So I'm going to take with the rook. And then finally develop my bishop. See if I can tie that knight down. Now I've got to figure out where my knight wants to be. And I think my knight wants to be on d4. Uh-huh. So if I play my king up to e2, he's got to check. So we'll just move our king over. And I think I want to trade rooks because my bishop is better than his. Because his pawns are on the same color as my bishop. They can be targeted. Now initially it looks like I get an isolated pawn by recapturing, but I don't, since this pawn actually is connected to these pawns. And it does control the c4 square, which I like. So let's inch my king in a little bit. This looks like a pretty drawish position, but I've lost lots of drawish positions, so can't be sure about that yet. So about 7 minutes. Let's think here. His knight might come up to this square at some point. I think my king still wants to get closer also. And my knight still needs to get improved. So, Right, we're going to bring our knight back so I can try and get him to the d4 square. If he comes in with his knight, I'm just going to need to take it. I've got to be a little careful about my f4 pawn, since I cannot protect it with anything but my knight. See how he decides to proceed. Okay, c5, preventing my knight from coming into d4. In which case, my knight's just going to come right back, I think. Is there somewhere else my knight can go? How do I get to this square? h4, h5, or h4, knight g3, h5. That's an idea. I can also just push d4 right now. That might be good. I'm going to push d4 right now, and if he captures, I'll recapture with the knight. So pretty even position still. I just need to make sure I keep an eye on this d5 square so that f4 doesn't become too weak. As long as I keep f4 safe, my e5 pawn is a threat, so he can't drift too far away from that. And I have to make sure that his king isn't able to infiltrate too far. So now my knight is going to come back with the idea of playing d5. So he's going to stop that with c6. Okay, let's get h4 in. Useful move. Now he's looking to push through here. But if he ever does, I'm going to get the c5 outpost for my knight. So let's play bishop f3 so I can push h5 at some point if I choose. And if he plays g or b4 here, I think I'll take once and then play the knight check, play my knight into c5. A lot of maneuvering in this endgame. Became an endgame pretty quickly, which happens a lot in that line, that queen f3 line of the Scotch. Leads to a lot of early endgames. But if you've played it a lot, you get pretty familiar with those endgames. So the plans are not something you have to come up with on the spot. One of the big challenges in endgames is that in endgames that you haven't seen before, it's hard to come up with the correct plan. So reaching an endgame that you know is familiar can be very helpful. Alright, so he has negated that plan. What about my king? Where's my king want to be? My king might want to be on c3. And I'm not super worried about him trying to create a passed pawn here, because it's not very easy for him to do. My king should be able to hold down the fort over there by himself for the moment. So my knight's going to go on a journey towards h5. And now it's becoming double-edged. He's going to bring his king over. But how far can the king really go? I guess my knight still has trouble getting in here. Alright, let's take once. See if he takes back with the knight or the pawn. If he takes back with the knight, his pawn structure is pretty weak. Alright. So now I'm going to see if I can get my knight up to e3. His king's trying to get into this square. So we're just going to bring our king over. I don't mind if he pushes this pawn. As soon as one of those pawns moves forward and commits, then his position is much harder because the pawns become weaker. It's easier for my king to get in. Alright, this is a strange position. So he can place his bishop here, but when I move my king, his king's in check. Definitely not a short game. Yep. And then I'm going to play the check. And then I'm going to move my knight back to g3 and hit the bishop. And then reroute my bishop back, or my knight back to e2 probably. So let's attack the bishop. I can also play f3 at some point, but then I have to hang on to the f3 pawn, so it's hard to know how to make progress in this endgame. It seems like right now I'm holding black at bay. It helps that all of black's play is on the one side of the board, the queen side. And I haven't been able to create too much myself. But he does have to continually worry about this e-pawn that, if everything moves out of the way, can run down the board pretty quickly. Okay, his bishop goes back. So knight f1 to e3 next. Do I play f3? Maybe I play f3 just to shore up this square. Then I'm tied to the f3 pawn, so I'm not sure I like that. But it does control this square better. Yeah, we'll play f3. And I'm not sure how he makes progress here, but he still has plenty of things to try, I guess. He might play c5 at some point. Okay, so his bishop's going backwards. Yeah, now his knight comes into this square and hits f4. So maybe I shouldn't have played f3. All right, bring our knight back to guard f4. And I guess bishop f2. Well, hopefully you're having an easier game than I am, Jeremy, since I am not accomplishing much here. I'm holding him at bay for the moment, though. Let's see what he tries next. Wouldn't be surprised to see c5. He can win the f4 pawn if he plays c3, but I think then he doesn't really have any chances to win. So we're just going to move our bishop back and forth. I'll offer a draw. Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't want it. Sure, he doesn't want the draw. He's the one pushing, so he might as well keep playing, I guess. Okay, let's see what he's trying here. Is he winning a pawn if he plays c3 now? All right, I'll go back this way then. Trying to get rid of the bishops. Both under a minute now. Now my bishop is really tied down. But my king is not. So can my king do something here? Only got 30 seconds left. Is he going to just try and run me out of time? Nope. Okay. Has he found a way in? Maybe. Looks like it. All right, he won the pawn. He won the pawn he was trying to win. I've got 8 seconds left, so not very long. Yeah, I'm going to run out of time here. It was a good game, though. Yeah, not enough time to defend that position. Out of time. All right, very good game, though. That was enjoyable. Well, then you should be somewhere around where I am, Jeremy. Same number of points if you won 3 straight. That should be 8 points. 45 minutes left. Whew, that was a long one. That ate up a lot of time. There's probably a way to hold that, too. All right, so we should have time for 2 or 3 more games. And then after the tournament, I'm going to take a look at those few games quickly. Yeah, those last 3 games were all really interesting. All right, let's see if it's going to pair us here. 2 or 3 more good games in. Deja Vu 13. All right, let's play E4. Let's play King's Gambit this time. I should have berserked. That would have been fun. All right, Knight F3. I'm going to play Bishop C4 and Castle. And see if we can attack down the F file as quickly as possible. Just throw our pieces at him. Oh, you're just playing. Oh, you're just playing in general. Okay. Yeah. What is it? You need 25 games or something? Okay. Well, apparently my opponent has never seen this before, so he's taking a nice long think. All right. Bishop C4. Yeah, I remember there's one day where my sole goal was to get enough games in that I could play in the tournaments that I wanted to. All right, I'm not going to exchange bishops. Maybe I'll play F5 next and hit the bishop. Maybe go back to C4. Need the castle soon. Their king side's not very developed though. So they're not any closer to castling than I am. Okay, well, before I castle, let's guard that pawn. I can also guard it with D3. But in this case, since I played D6 without their dark squared bishop out, I'm not worried about the pin on my knight. So my knight is protecting the E4 pawn just fine. In some positions, the bishop being on B4 negates this knight's defense of the pawn. And then you'd prefer to have a position where you have C3 and D3 pushed instead. All right, we're going to go ahead and castle here. I'm not worried about grabbing that pawn yet. I'll play D4 and grab it at some later point. D4 will also come with the immediate threat of getting the pawn to D5. See if he pushes B5. So this almost feels like a little bit like a Roy Lopez game with the bishop being chased back a little bit. So my plan is D4 with the threat of pushing one of these pawns to the next square. And then develop my bishop and see if there are any tactics from there. So we've got the immediate threat of pushing D5, winning a piece. We also have the idea of pushing E5 in some positions, probably not yet, but in some positions we'll do that. I'd also like to get my queen off of D1 so that my rook can occupy it from the A file. Here I want my rooks on the D file and the F file, and my queen on the E file. That's the kind of setup that I'm looking for. Oh, you're playing the black side of a dragon? Yeah. If white doesn't know what they're doing, they can certainly get in trouble. Bad variation from white in the Yugoslav. Well, not going to look at it during this game. But I might take a look at it after this tournament while I'm looking at the other games. So one thing I can say about my opponent is he is using his time. And since we do have 10 minutes in this game, that is a good thing. Probably something I should be doing more of. Alright, so I got my pawn back. I've got the F file, but I don't have that much pressure on his king. So let's attack his bishop. And I'm going to throw my pawns down the board. Let's see if we can make something happen that way. Alright, so now let's get our queen off the d file, guard the e4 square, bring the other rook to the d file. And I've got to find a way to crack open the king side, because all I've done so far is expose my own king. I have not exposed his king. Yeah, this is another position where I mentioned earlier that a lot of times white wishes they had a pawn on c3. Here, my bishop really wants to be on c2. It's really bad. Can I? See, can I? Where's my friend list? Maybe I should just look at bullet games. We played a bunch of bullet games. Played a bunch of blitz games. How do I find you? What's your username, Jeremy? Crumb something. Alright, I think my opponent moved. Let me go back and see that. Okay, so he actually just pinned himself. So we can go ahead and push this pawn and attack the knight. And that'll win a piece because when I take the knight, I'm hitting the queen with tempo. So b5 does not save the piece here. Let's see. Did we play a bunch of blitz games? I'm not quite as familiar with this site. So it's a little hard for me to navigate it. Yeah, I don't know where I can find all of my games. I don't want my current games. I want my past games. So bullet, okay, view the games. That sounds good. Now, at some point, I played Jeremy in a bunch of games. And if I can find those games, then I can look at whatever game he's talking about right now. Okay, let's go back to our game now. It says 0 friends online, though. Maybe we're not friends on here. Okay, so he sacrificed his knight, but I don't think that helps. I take his knight first. And maybe I just don't take that knight. Yeah, let's just not take it. I don't want to let his queen get into g4 with check. I'm not sure we're friends on here, though, Jeremy, so it doesn't show up there. Maybe if I played less games, it would be easier to find them. Oh, maybe I can go to the top and search. Opponent? Oops. Opponent's name. Is this going to give me some? No? I don't know. I'm not having any luck right now with the Jeremy. Okay, so he retreated his knight. So we need to... We're going to move our king over. Oh, he is starting to win this pawn. Alright, let's bring our other rook to guard it. And then I'm thinking move my king to h1 and put my other rook on g1 and see if I can attack down the g file. So he's rerouting his knight. I think I'm fine with a queen trade here, since I am up right now. Oh, but this gives him the bishop back. That was not smart. Now the knight takes. Alright, well, we'll take this pawn. Crum J81. Crum J81. Did it bring up some? Yes, it did. Okay. Rapid games, 4 wins. I don't know, I still can't click on the stuff. I'll have to fool around with it later. Especially because I'm losing this game now. B3. Alright, so now that we've gotten distracted enough to lose our good position, we're going to just try and keep our pieces active. I want to get this knight from f3 into the game. Maybe take on f6. I'm down by a pawn, but I've got a pretty good position. His king's not exposed, but a lot of his pawns are weak, so I think I should be able to pick some of them off. I'm also attacking the c7 pawn. And if he takes my knight and I take back, I guess I gotta take back with the bishop so I don't lose the c2 pawn. Maybe I push g5 at some point. Yeah, it's pretty complicated now. Much more complicated than I wanted it to be. Okay, well, that was not the right move because that's a free knight. So he pretty much had to take that. Now it's much less complicated. Exactly as complicated as I wanted it to be. Now I just need to do a better job trading off the pieces and calling it a game. Well, I've seen this on profiles before, and usually if it says this, and they haven't kicked you off, that I think it just means that someone got upset, and if they look into it and agree with it, then they probably just kick you off. But clearly they haven't kicked your account off since you're still playing. Check. And Lichess is usually very fast, I think. But don't ask me. I know nothing about that stuff. Alright, so we're just going to guard our knight. And we're going to trade rooks. I could have traded rooks first since it was with check. But this way I keep the F file. Does that mean it's not going to let me look at the games? I mean, it says that you've played games. But not that many. Mostly just the games we've played against each other. I'm going to have to do more work to explore Lichess so I actually understand how the site works. Because I didn't really use it much until I started streaming. Just because I think that it looks nice. It's got a good platform. And I think the arenas are really good for streaming. Good variety of time controls. Okay, let's go ahead and continue with our trade plan. And then we're going to commence with plan push the passed pawn. We're going to push this pawn all the way down and get a queen. And there's really nothing black can do about it. Since the queening square is on a light square, I'm going to be able to play my bishop to guard that square soon enough. And I do not care about that pawn. So you can go ahead and have it, sir. You can go ahead and give me another check too, and I'll run up to G3. And this should be mate in a couple. He can delay it by pushing the H pawn if he wants to, but that's not going to accomplish much. I should have just pushed the pawn because he couldn't take the bishop, or I queen with mate. But this way I also get to keep the bishop. Okay, he wants to check me again. Is he going to take the A pawn? It's a free pawn. I'm offering it for free. I'm being generous. Nope, he goes back. And mate next move. Good game, sir. How much longer we have? 29 minutes. Got time for one, maybe two more games. But I think I'm going to pause right now. I'm going to try and pause, yep. And I want to take a look at these three games that I finished. 1, 2, 3. I want to look through these games quickly. Let's see. Here, I am going to turn on the computer because I'm curious what the evaluation was at various points. And in this game, we played an E6 Sicilian. And I mentioned how after this move, A3 basically gives equality. F4 immediately isn't really the main move either. Developing one of the bishops is pretty standard. So we go through here, very standard setups, all the way up to this point right here. Yeah, so I mentioned that in this position, it's unusual for white to retreat the knight. Exchanging the knight is almost always correct. Retreating the knight to b3 is unusual in the e6 Sicilians. And you can see the computer just wants to play f4 right away. Alright, so it is completely equal. Did it like e5? Okay, so here it does not want us to play e5 because of the move that white played. So we underestimated, or I underestimated, white playing knight d5. So I should play rook c8 or castle, the other moves I was looking at. Alright, was there any hope after this? Wow. So it says rook takes is just winning, +5. Seems hard to believe, very surprising. +13 if he exchanges. Maiden 15. Alright, so apparently it did not matter where I put my king at the end. Wow. Okay, well apparently rook takes f7 was just completely crushing. No question about it. Alright, well, that's enough looking at that game. What about this next one? In this one, it was an exchange French. So we go through the opening, standard setups here. He expanded on the king side pretty quickly, and you can see that black has achieved at least equality. Okay, it's giving white a slight edge now, but nothing big. So it wanted me to ignore that, but I didn't want the g file to become open. So I played f5. Okay, it's giving white a little edge now. And yeah, that knight move, there was no way that knight move could be right. Okay, it likes c5, but what does it like more? Queen c7. Yeah, it's like that in a couple situations. So my queen probably just isn't doing anything on the d file, so I might as well get it onto the c file before I continue with opening up the position. So that makes sense. c5, position opens up. Oh, +5 now if I just attack the bishop. I wasn't really thinking about playing on the king side. Yep, queen c7, still the move. Yeah, and you'll remember I thought a while on this move about what to do. I was considering a few different moves. But bishop e5 gives up most of my advantage. So again, queen c7. So it looks like queen c7 every move was better than what I did. Right, bishop e5. Wants me to just take the knight. Okay, we're still +3. So it wants me to jump the knight in first. Something better here. Pushing d4. So it looks like I might have played these moves in the wrong order. Had the right ideas. Yeah, it still wants me to play knight g6, which I just did not really consider. Although here I guess I'm just trapping the bishop. I wasn't even focused on that though. I was looking at trying to get his king. Okay, this is still fine. Alright, so knight c3 check was not just winning on the spot. Wants me to just go after the bishop still. I'm still +2, +3 here, so I'm still winning. Still good. Okay, no longer winning, but +1. Now it's equal. And I should just go right back. Oh, the queen can't take, because if the knight goes back and the queen takes, I've got the bishop check winning the queen. Okay. Still even. Yeah, and here I just have to play the knight check, because again, the queen can't take. Okay, so I missed that tactic. Alright, that was a good tactic. Alright, interesting. Now let's take a look at this endgame. This one's a little longer. I was playing whoops. We had another Scotch. We saw black play the main line this time, or one of the main lines. It's giving me a slight edge, but nothing big here. Yeah. Wow, moving my bishop, letting him take my knight. What happens there? Here, he just takes my knight. It says I'm +1. Really? Just because it's the bishop pair? Wow. That's hard to believe. Okay, well, I was scared of him doubling my c-pawns, but it doesn't look like that's a big deal at all here. So rook g3, not quite the right plan. Gave equality. Okay, and I've got the edge back. Took, take with the rook was correct. Okay, it likes that. Still have the edge. So here I lost the edge. I should move my king up. What was I worried about there? I was looking at here. So my king belongs on e1, I guess. Or I try and trade off rooks. Okay, that makes sense. So king c1, a little bit too passive. My king is cut off now. So that gives equality. We're still fine. My guess is just under time pressure, I couldn't hold it. Yeah, so bringing my knight back and letting him control the d5 square gave him a slight edge. but it's essentially equal at this point. King runs back. Okay, now it's giving him close to a full point. No, just over half a point still. Yeah, I just kind of ran out of moves. That was the big thing. I was having trouble making moves. I've got kind of this cramped position, so he did a good job creating chances. Still equal though. Okay, yep. So that was the big mistake. Pushing F3 just like I thought in the game was the losing mistake, since it prevented me from being able to control the D5 square with my bishop or my knight. And so now I can't contest D5. His knight's going to get there. And that's exactly the square I talked about in the game that I did not want his knight to get to. As soon as the knight gets there, I'm just lost. There's just nothing I can do. I don't have any moves, and he's going to be able to eventually coordinate his pieces like he did and start picking off pawns. I think he probably had an easier win here, but what he did worked just fine. Yeah, so that was a really good game. I was in it for a while, and I knew exactly where my mistake was. Unlike in the previous game we just looked at, where I wasn't sure exactly where the mistake was. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so I'm going to call that a session. We got 7 games in, 4 wins, 3 losses. If you're interested in learning some simple Scots traps and theory, games 1 and 3 are pretty useful to look at, since those were pretty clean wins. So the 4 wins were very clean, and the 3 losses were good games. So I was pretty happy. All right, hopefully you guys enjoyed those games. I'll be on again in the next few days, probably each of the next few days, for a couple hours to get some more chess in. I hope you guys all had a good holidays, and I will see you later.